Amazon orders. If you place an order, then there is a software service that basically pick that order and then check whether the actual payment can be completed in one aspect, and then it goes to the stores and check whether the actual good is available. Let's say that both the scenarios return negative response to the system. Now, in ideal situation, it's a cancel or the order cannot be processed because the payment gateway is down, the good is not available in the store. But what the system does is it actually proceeds with the order and give a success message to the user, and then the payment related process is queued into a particular queue which is robust enough, and then once the payment is out, it processes that, and also once the order is available, it processes the order and then check whether the store is having the good. Let's say that the store is not having the good right now. Then what it does is it identify all these requests which are partially completed, but then we have given a promise to the customer saying that you have a good in our store, but in actual sense, the good is not in our store. So you identify all these orders which are not being processed, which are smaller in sense. So if you just wait, if you just validate with the store and then process the order, then it's going to take more work for them to do that. But rather, smaller percentage of cases where you can process the order, but then later realize that the good is not in store. So that percentage is smaller. So you just pick those orders which are not being processed because the order is not available in the store. And then you call the customer and give him a discount and say that, okay, we'll process it after 2 months since the order is not available in our store. But in aid of that delay, we'll give you a discount. So that system is something that moving toward this anti-fragile way of doing things.
Monolith is set to fail the whole system. That everyone of us know that. One failure point pulls down the whole system, all set completely. This is even a step forward, but to me, in today's world that we're living, this is only even a baby step. I wouldn't even say a baby step. We are too far away in looking at what we actually term it as anti-fragile here. What one of the design aspects that we have today, which can also be looked at one of the steps towards anti-fragile, is this so-called this retry mechanism. You know, in many of the integrations or the third-party calls, we build something called retry. It's very rudimentary, very basic step, but it is a step forward on that direction, definitely. But I think the system, as Nirosh mentioned, we have the systems in place today, the background systems which will enable us to go this path. It's just that we have to shape ourselves in the way we think and do these things. For example, the cloud and the infrastructure that has definitely enables you to be anti-fragile. I think that's where we stand today. In terms of the levels, we are way too less in terms of where we need to approach. But I think the directions are there, at least where we need to go and move forward.
And in what you have seen right here, wherever you are now or in Tesco, can you think of some instance where you had to do a process change to give a kind, or when I say process change, it's both IT process and a business process was needed to get a sense of resilience or anti-fragility. For example, an order is completed, but at the end of the day, I will go back and send a mail to the customer, or some customer representative will call them and then say, you know what, we accepted your order, we don't have stock, can you send it after 1 week and give 20% discount? Which means the business has to accept that. Okay, so the resilience, anti-fragility is not just in software. The IT process has to change and the business process has to change. Have you had any experience where you had to go back to the business to build at least maybe in a big process, 2 steps you could make it anti-fragile?
Yeah, so core purpose of the website is to generate the order. Once Now, when it comes to fulfillment, we typically design this exception queue, which we call it as anything that you're not able to do, don't. It's like a long queue, and people are somebody in the middle is actually creating a noise about it. So we are just pulling that guy and putting it into a separate bucket so that the queue is not disturbed. So in this particular exception queue, what happens is typically during a very high volume period, like a holiday period, what happens is this exception queue becomes itself as a problem to even be dealt. So there is a need to actually split the exception queue in terms of purposes, right?
Okay.
What is a problem which is related to my stock? What is a problem related to my payment? So I would suggest we have tried, but I wouldn't say we have not built something which was completely resilient to get it to the state where we were. But at least what we tried to do in this case is split the exception queue into multiple reasoning and create a process flow saying, hey, if a ticket lands here, which is a stock problem, what has to happen? What is the workflow beyond that to get it to the final stage? That kind of a flow was managed. And I think in today's world, in many of the e-commerces, people do this for payments because payments is one of the key area where people face the issue and where you need a customer interaction. Stock in many scenarios would be a more internal problem than a problem to be dealt with customer. So I think in that sense, that particular area, I would say both change from an IT is more enabler to it. There is a transformation that we have actually pushed it to go this direction of anti-fragile by bringing in a business process, how to manage that, how do you interact with the customer, where is the other functions in your enterprise going to change to adapt to this. I think that's a good example to actually go that direction.
So as an architect, right, when you're trying to do this, right, how easy or difficult was it to convince the business? Okay, so classically we have this problem, right? I am the business owner, I am telling you, you do it, right? But in order to make an anti-fragile system, the architect needs to kind of influence the business, in a way, kind of drive the business.
Okay. So typically what happens is moment we bring such a problem, right? Hey, I need a workflow to manage this exception queue. You need to have multiple reasons and each of the reason could lead into a different workflow. Business comes back, or anybody who's a owner, right, comes back to try to find the fault in IT, right? They'll say, hey, your systems are not good, so hence these problems are happening. Why are orders moving into exception queue? Why can't you manage this in your solution? That's the mindset where relating to your point, right? People try to avoid failures. Why do I need to get into a failure to address that, right? Instead, there is no what do you say, acceptance immediately saying, hey, I need to approach this completely different from what the system is actually designed for. So that line has been really tough to draw, and it's only when we hit a major issue where you have to go through a big mess, which it happened during the 2002 holidays, where there are about 2,000 orders stuck in the exception queue. That is when they realized the importance of it, and it took, trust me, it took many years to even shape that exception queue and decide what has to happen for each of the workflow. So that's the challenge, and I think it has to change, it to be in the change of the mindset of how we approach the problem versus what needs to be designed as a solution, right?